Hey, another off-roader. This time we travel to the British Isles to see what Land Rover was doing in the mid-aughts. Oh, and this is another crossover episode with Doug's Cars. Enjoy. Alright, the mid-size off-roader, circa 2006. Very recently I reviewed the Hummer H3, much to the chagrin of the Hummer crowd. Just read the comments on that one. They didn't react well to being told that the interiors were crap and the 5-cylinder was a turd. And early in this channel's history, I also reviewed my daily driver at the time, my 2006 Nissan Pathfinder LE. While maybe not marketed as an off-roader like the LR3 or H3, that'd be more reserved for the closely related Xterra, it was sold more as a people mover, but it still had some decent chops and Easter eggs that made it pretty decent at being an off-roader. While that Pathfinder still did have some decent off-road chops, the same can't be said for the following generation of the Pathfinder. So, before I lose the plot any further than I've already have, let's see what Land Rover was doing during that time period. Well, a lot. Now, if you're watching this video, you probably know the history of Land Rover. British manufacturer Rover designed the British's take on the Jeep idea following World War II. Rover itself would be purchased by British Leyland in 1967, which I would describe as the GM of British motoring industry, if GM was a hot mess of competing brands, consistent worker strikes, and a rapidly declining product quality. Or a much worse, rapidly declining product quality. Soon, the original Range Rover, which was introduced in 1970, something a little more civilian compared to the utilitarian nature of the Series 3 Landy of the time. Now, up until 1978, Land Rover was still a model under Rover itself. However, in 1978, British Leyland would split off Land Rover into its own unique division. Like Jeep in the States, the off-roader brand would carry pretty much whatever parent company that owned it. British Leyland would limp on until 1988, when it was finally broken up and privatized, and the Rover Group would become part of British Aerospace. However, much like Jeep and the ZJ project, Land Rover was working on something new during this time of turmoil. At the 1989 Frankfurt Auto Show, the Discovery was debuted, and would go on sale in the UK in October of that year. Aimed in the slot between the range topper Range Rover and the Jeep Fighter Defender, the Discovery was the Goldilocks solution to the lineup. More civilized than the steel dashboard of the Defender, yet still tough enough that they immediately used it as race vehicles in the legendary Camel Trophy. Rover would go on to be sold once again in 1994, this time to BMW, before them themselves sold Land Rover to Ford in 2000. Now, this was a time where Ford snapped up a bunch of European brands to form the Premier Automotive Group. On top of putting Lincoln and Mercury in PAG, Land Rover would join Jaguar, Aston Martin, and Volvo. While Land Rover had already begun to shift its non-Defender models upmarket under BMW, it was full steam ahead with Ford money. This meant a direction that was aimed more towards street comfort rather than everything designed to take on the Camel Trophy and then some. The small Freelander was Land Rover's first unibody vehicle, followed by the third generation of Range Rover, which would share much with the BMW 7 Series at the time. During this time, models were getting more car-like underneath, and all the tech was being thrown at these new models. This tech and upscale push would continue on to the Discovery 3. Yes, fellow dumb Americans, this is the third generation of Discovery. Here in the States, it was renamed LR3 because alphanumerics were the style at the time, much as they are now. Yeah, this is still a dumb move, especially if you have cool names like Freelander, Discovery, and Defender. Introduced in 2004 and on sale by the end of that year, the LR3/Disco 3 was a huge departure from previous Discoveries. While the 2 was essentially an evolution over the original, the LR3 was a whole new take on the popular British box. It featured what Land Rover proudly called integrated body frame, which took a single body monocoque and placed it on top of a traditional ladder frame. Essentially, this was a unibody on top of a frame, and the entire goal was this to be strong and tough. Gone are the traditional solid axles, and their place is a fully independent suspension like that out of the LR3 Range Rover. And also like in that Range Rover, it uses air springs. And because this was now the 2000s and had Ford's money up the wazoo, Land Rover also threw a bunch of electronic off-road control systems at the LR3. You had hill descent control to help the descension on steep grades, four-wheel electronic traction control to prevent wheel spin at low speeds, and dynamic stability control, which is honestly just as standard traction control that's on all cars now. But the LR3's big toy was Terrain Response System, which was one of the first off-road set-in systems of its kind. Now, in off-roaders today, these are fairly common, but this was a huge deal in the mid-2000s. Before, off-roading was something that required a lot of trial and error to build skill to know the limits of your vehicle in different terrains. Now, Land Rover gave you a knob that adjusts the suspension and dishes out the power that best suits that terrain. Heck, it feels kind of condescending when you read the Wikipedia blurb of the LR3. It's like reading straight out of some PR pamphlet. Previously, off-road driving had been a skill that many drivers found daunting. A wide-ranging knowledge of the vehicle was needed to be able to select the correct gear transfer ratio, various differential systems, and master various techniques required for tackling steep hills, deep water, and other off-road terrain. Terrain Response attempted to take away as many of the difficulties as possible. Yada yada yada, you had 5 terrains to select from: sand, grass, gravel and snow, mud and ruts, and rocks. But yeah, that was just pure dribble. Anyways, all of that stuff made the LR3 a much more complicated vehicle. It's still cool with the 4.4-liter Jaguar AJ41 V8 that produced 300 horsepower and 315 foot-pounds of torque, hooked up to a 6-speed automatic or manual. I don't think we got the manual in the States. It's all wrapped up in a boxy design that's held up really well 15 years later. But all these electronic nannies, the air suspension, it all screams failing spectacularly at some point. I don't know. Everything about Land Rover from this period onward just feels like it's just riding on the greatness of the Land Rover name while just throwing all the tech they can at it. Original Land Rovers and Defenders are legendary vehicles that were sold and thrived in harsh climates all over the world. The original Discovery, despite being more civilized, still had a toughness you can't deny. This, it's just throwing everything at something that evokes toughness, and yeah, it's a good off-roader, but all this tech means you have more stuff to maintain and more stuff to fix when it goes wrong. Yeah, this image has seemingly gotten more high-tech and soft since Ford sold Land Rover and Jag to Tata Motors in 2008. The Discovery 5 looks like a more bulbous Range Rover now, and that's like the whole story of the entire Land Rover lineup now. Save for the Defender, which looks like a concept car from 2004. Anyways, compared to the H3 and the Pathfinder, the LR3 does feel more solidly built. Everything has a heft to it, from the doors to just the switches on the dash. The tailgate is this weird asymmetrical design that does provide ample picnic seating. To help with picnicking, the center console doubles as a mini fridge, and this one actually works still. Did you know these things have a third row? I did not. This one does. Yeah. There's also this weird shelf above the radio. It's also the perfect size for someone to put a modern phone in. Doug uses this to place his phone in navigation on long trips to Florida and the North Carolina Outer Banks, and the perfect size means he doesn't have to worry about his phone tipping over and flying everywhere. It just wedges in perfectly. Unlike the H3, which is just kind of bare and plastic inside, the LR3 is almost overflowing with quirks and features. So, yeah, while they technically competed against each other, the LR3 with the V8 was actually almost $15,000 more than the H3 Adventure. So, yeah, It definitely feels like a higher quality vehicle than the H3. It just, a lot more stuff to go wrong here. Anyways, yeah. This is second of the cars I've reviewed of cars owned by Doug's Cars. He traded in a Range Rover Classic last year for it, and it served as his daily pretty much ever since. While the i3 from a couple episodes ago is a better city commuter, the LR3 has performed flawlessly as his road trip vehicle. When he got it, it needed brakes, tires, a lower control arm, and a full detail. He's covered this SUV on his channel extensively, so I recommend checking his channel out. It also needed a full detail. The owner prior to the gentleman that traded it to him had let his teenage daughters take it to college, and yeah, the interior was pretty much trashed. It's cleaned up decently, but he's been off-roading a few times since, so he's still finding mud inside. It's an off-roader. You gotta expect him to use it off-road. But with 228,000 miles as of recording, it's been a decent SUV for him. If you've followed his channel much, you see he's very much a Land Rover guy. While the old Range Rover wasn't exactly highway friendly, the LR3 has served him well, and it proudly sits in his driveway next to his buddy's Jeeps. So yeah, Land Rover LR3. It's a decent off-roader that you can find at a decent deal nowadays. But the abundance of mid-aughts tech and electronics all over it just makes this Wookie very wary of buying one used. Buy at your own risk, people. Anyways, hope you enjoyed this video. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you once again for watching another episode of Wookie Drives. This week's episode comes courtesy of Doug from Doug's Cars. Please check out his channel for all sorts of automotive adventures, from the most recent addition to his fleet in his cheap town car to driving a Mosler of all things. Doug's a great guy and has helped my little channel grow, so be sure, check out his channel and check out his Twitter. If you have a car or truck you'd like to see on the show and you happen to be in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, submissions can be made at wookiedrives@gmail.com. That's wookiedrives@gmail.com. Be sure to follow my official Facebook page for channel updates, and follow my Twitter and Instagram at WookieAutomoTV for more Wookie rants, raves, and shenanigans. Be sure to give the video a like, share with all your Land Rover friends, drop a comment with some banter or feedback, and don't forget to subscribe for more Wookie Drives like these. Thank you so much for watching, and have a good day.
It seems that no matter where we go or what we do, we always take my Land Rover LR3. Like when my daughter had to transport her ambitious yet prize-winning science project, it was, let's take mine. When the wife's 6 extra-tall relatives made a surprise visit, I took them to her sister's. In mine. Took mine. Took mine. When we went on a supposedly sun-filled vacation, we just had to take mine. And when the clouds finally parted, I'm glad we had mine.
Always be glad you took yours. The LR3 by Land Rover. Designed for the extraordinary. Nicely equipped at $4.99 a month.